Hi, I'm Anna Harrison with Drink in the Movies, and I'm here with Natalie Metzger, who's the producer of two films at Tribeca this year, Werewolves Within and the Beta Test. So thank you so much for being here and chatting with me. Really appreciate it. Just to start, now that you have two films at Tribeca. So how's that experience been for you? Because you were in person for a little bit, right?
Yeah, it was a total whirlwind. I mean, in an amazing way. It was really, really great to actually have an in-person festival again. I didn't realize how much I had really, truly missed it for the past year and a half. But yeah, there's nothing like actually sitting in a real audience and getting live feedback from people on a movie that you've made. That just that's like what it's all about. So yeah, both of our films have big comedic elements. And so it was really great to be able to hear the laughter,
Mm-hmm.
moving through the audience and gasps at some points. And because we had done only virtual feedback screenings for the past year and a half. So we hadn't yet gotten that live response. So it was absolutely amazing. Definitely a lot to have two features at the festival, but luckily they like were spread out where the beta test premiered on Friday and Werewolves Within premiered on Wednesday. So we had a little bit of a separation between them so we could kind of like finish one and start the other. But yeah, it was amazing. And Tribeca did a really great job of doing the outdoor venues and like doing these like little pods so people felt really safe. And yeah.
That's awesome. I mean, I got screenings from the PR people, and so I was like sitting on my couch and chuckling to myself alone in my room. But I mean, yeah, it's so nice to be in a theater again, I'm sure. Did did COVID affect any of what while you were filming Werewolves Within or the beta test, or was that all kind of happening afterwards?
So we were very lucky with our timing. We filmed the beta test at the end of 2019. So we were just in post production during COVID, and so obviously it affected some of post, but we were able to do all of post remote, and then just like figure out vaccinations or testing for the like in-person final sound mix and stuff. And then same thing for Werewolves Within. We were very lucky with that film. We were filming in upstate New York from January 5th through March 9th of
Oh
2020.
wow.
And so we wrapped March 9th. We flew back to LA March 10th. And then 3 days later, we were in lockdown. But we were able to get all of our principal photography in. So yeah, so all of post-production was remote. We didn't meet our editor in person. None of us did, not even the director. We didn't meet our editor in person until the final sound mix. And so that was pretty crazy just to like have it all be virtual. But we used a couple different programs to be able to like live stream and stuff. And yeah, we were able to do it. So we were very, very lucky in that sense.
That's wow. Till March 5th is what you said?
March 9th is
March
it,
9th.
is the
Wow,
day we're
that
out.
is right down to the wire. Oh my gosh. Um, so you work as a producer, obviously, but at Vanishing Angle, which is a production company. So I was wondering if you could maybe, because I feel like a lot of times people think of the role of a producer as it's a very nebulous kind of thing, and people it's hard to define. So I was wondering if you could go into that a little bit more, and especially how working as a producer at a production company is different than being an independent producer and just going like project to project freelance.
Yeah, I mean, what's nice is that I'm the VP of Production and Development at Vanishing Angle, and I started with Vanishing Angle as a freelance producer, so just doing different projects. I would do like a pilot here and a music video there, and then pretty soon it was like, great, do this series, great, do this feature, and I kind of was at the offices so much because the projects were back to back that it was a very natural transition into a full-time job. And even though there's a lot of my plate of dealing with like company stuff and like strategy and overall kind of approach with how we're dealing with our slate of productions and all that stuff, I still very much get to be an on the ground producer, which is the thing that I love to do. And so that's what's great, is that I actually kind of have like the best of both worlds. I get to have the kind of freelance style of going project to project, and really being everything from soup to nuts. And so from script phase through casting, hiring crew, being on set every day. Like oftentimes I'm taking on the line producer role as well as UPM role, sometimes even first AD role. I've also first AD'd the beta test as well as produced it. And so, yeah, depending on the project and like the budget level, I can be like wearing a lot of hats, but you know, I see the project all the way through post-production and then also through festivals and distribution and all of that fun stuff. So, yeah, you know, the role of a producer, I think there's like a lot of questions about it, which is something that we're working to change of like, you know, like to define what a producer is. You know, because there's producers that are on the ground, like nuts and bolts, can get it done producers. There are creative producers, and then we kind of combine those two roles. But then there are also producers that just get the financing, or producers that maybe like brought on a cast member. And so, yeah, we're working, you know, kind of industry wide to try to adjust that as well. So that is not so nebulous.
That's great. Bit random, but you also, I mean, in addition to producing and doing AD stuff for beta tests, did you also have a cameo in it at a party? Because I was watching it and I was like, I think that's her, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I've been in every every single one of Jim's features in like some way. Yeah, you know, we're very hands-on producers, and so if we need a crowd scene, we don't have a big enough crowd, we will hop in.
Awesome. So I see the Thunder Road poster behind you, which also you helped produce and also directed, starring Jim Cummings. So could you tell me, because y'all have worked together for quite some time, so I mean, could you tell me a little bit about how that partnership formed? Because I mean, like, you know, from where I'm sitting, it seems like a great little thing y'all got going on.
Yeah, I mean, we've done 9 short films and 3 feature films together so far. Yeah, he just told me about his newest script that he's writing at while we were at Tribeca together, and I'm like so excited about about the next project. But yeah, so Jim and I met through Matt Miller, who's the president of Vanishing Angle, and it was at a time where I was freelancing a bunch with the company. And Matt just said like, hey, I need someone to run. It was right after Jim won the grand jury at Sundance for his Thunder Road short.
Mm-hmm.
And after he won that, Full Screen commissioned a 6-part anthology series for him to do, essentially like 6 more single take shorts. And so he came to Vanishing Angle. He had worked with Matt a bunch before, and he was like, hey, I need a producer. And Matt was like, oh, I think Natalie would be a good fit for you. And so we met and we started working together, and we immediately clicked. And so we did those 6 shorts together, and then Topic commissioned another 3 single take shorts as kind of this like trilogy, kind of anthology trilogy. So we did those together, and then the Thunder Road feature, the Wolf of Snow Hollow, and now the beta test.
Amazing. Yeah. That seems like such a nice, I don't know, it always seems like in this industry can be kind of volatile. So I feel like it's always nice to have, you know, a group of people that you can really count on, and you know that you're going to work well together and produce good stuff. So that's super nice. So what was it like, I mean, taking Thunder Road from a short to a feature? I mean, you weren't involved as much as the short, obviously, like you were saying, but that transition, because it feels, you know, it works really well as a feature, but it also, I feel like it would be so hard if you had this short idea to extend it without making it feel like bloated or like you're trying too hard, you know?
Totally. Yeah. I mean, and Jim didn't initially intend for it to become a feature. Like he kind of did the short as a standalone piece. And he struggled for a little bit to figure out, you know, because everyone would ask him, you know, after he won the big award, they're like, okay, great. Like, what's the feature version? And he kept on saying, like, I don't know if there is a feature version. I don't see it. And he kept on trying to make it so that the short was the like conclusion, that the whole movie was kind of like building up to this big moment. And then he kind of had this light bulb moment where he realized, no, that's actually the opening. Like the opening is this like really intense event. And that actually leads to this kind of downward spiral of this guy struggling with grief. And once he kind of clicked into that and realized that it was actually about his relationship with his daughter, Then he was able to write it like really, really quickly. And yeah, and then there was like a lot of pressure to film that scene again, because like, you know, I mean, it's slightly different, but the short is essentially the opening of the feature. And so there was a lot of pressure, you know, of like, okay, this is like this beloved short film, and like we can't screw it up. And I know Lowell Meyer, our cinematographer, like kept on saying that of like, I love this short, I don't want to, you know, screw it up. But I feel, you know, like really proud of how we approached that, and what we did, and you know, I think it was very successful.
I would agree. So to change gears a little bit and talk more about Werewolves Within. So I had a blast watching this. But I feel like a lot of times, because it's a video game adaptation of the game by the same name, and I feel like a lot of times there's definitely a stigma with video game adaptations, and they can be very hit or miss, and they're usually misses. So I was wondering, did you have any trepidations about that? Or I mean, because also, I mean, as a caveat, it doesn't really feel like a video game adaptation. You know, like there's some, it's like Lara Croft. You're like, okay, well, obviously that's a really big name video game. This kind of is a very its own unique kind of niche. Um, anyway, but I was just wondering, how did you kind of approach that, if you did it at all differently?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like the credit for that really goes to Ubisoft. This was the Ubisoft's first time doing a film completely independently. So you know, normally for some of their other IP, they like, you know, partner with like a studio, and this one they decided that they were like let's just do it completely in house. Let's like finance the whole thing ourselves, and then they brought us on to like to produce it, just, you know, to do like some more the nuts and bolts stuff. And they gave really a lot of creative freedom. I think sometimes video game adaptations can fail because they're like there are a lot of demands on them of like sticking true to the source material, but also being
Mm-hmm.
something new, and it's like a really fine line to walk. But Ubisoft kind of gave us free reign of like, just make a cool movie. And so that was like so much freedom. You know, and we brought on director Josh Rubin, and like Josh had such a really thoughtful and fun approach to the script, and they were very supportive, and they were like, yeah, go for it. And so I think like the credit really goes to Ubisoft for not being too precious with their own material, and like kind of saying like, let's just do something cool. So that was really fun.
Both of the films that you have at Tribeca, they both look amazing. And, you know, especially because there are moments that do require like big, not big, but, you know, practical effects, like someone gets stabbed or, you know, someone turns into a werewolf. Spoiler alert. But I was wondering, I mean, how do you, when you're not on a great big mega budget, how do you kind of balance the budget with still having that really good production value that makes it, you know, look like you had a mega budget?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of credit goes to our cinematographers. Ken Wales shot the beta test, and Matt Wise shot Werewolves Within, and both are really incredible cinematographers who were very creative with making the resources work. And then I think a lot of credit also goes to our production designers for each film, who also like just did so much to make the visual world come alive. And so Charlie Texter was our production designer for the beta test, and Brett Tanzer for Werewolves Within both did such incredible jobs of bringing that to life. And then I think like, you know, in terms of making, you know, stretching that dollar and stretching the budget to make it look really high quality, that's something that's really important to us at Vanishing Angle. It's something that we kind of pride ourselves on, that part of that is, you know, being like really smart about the budget. So really trying to tailor the budget to the script and also to the filmmaker of, you know, okay, this filmmaker, you know, wants a lot of takes. This filmmaker wants to prioritize the production design. This filmmaker needs a lot of time in post, and figuring out, okay, like what are the priorities of this particular film and this particular filmmaker, and then how do we adjust the different lines to match that, so we can be really, really efficient in some lines, knowing like, okay, great, like we know that like Jim moves really, really quickly, so you know, we don't like, we can, you know, be really, really tight and efficient with the schedule, and that might save us some time. Or just like knowing those things allows us to deprioritize certain things and prioritize other things. And then we wear a lot of hats. And so, part of that is just us, being able to hop in and do things when needed. And a lot of, um, Matt, comes from an AD background, so do I. And so that like also helps us just to be able to give thoughts and like I think a more educated response to like schedule and budget questions that allows us to prioritize the creative.
This is a bit of a downer question, but have there ever been any moments in your career where as a producer you've kind of had to be like, no, we need to take a step back and like we probably can't really do that? That's a very negative question. I'm sorry.
No, I mean, I think like the joke is that the producer tends to be like the no person of like, no, we can't do that. No, we can't do that. We don't have the money for that. But how I like to approach producing is I like to present options. And so it's never a no. It's like, okay, this is what our budget is. So we could do this or we could do that. And so instead of it being like, no, we can't have this crane for 5 days, it's like, okay, great. So we can get this crane for 3 days if we adjust this thing here. And, if we are able to, trim this thing down, then we can do this. And so it's just like presenting options and trying to be a like creative sounding board as well of like, okay, great. Instead of a crane, like, can we do this thing with a drone and can it move quicker so we can only do it in like 1 or 2 days or, like stuff like that, where it's just being a sounding board to come up with different ideas and to try to approach some problems from outside the box.
So in the beta test, right, so Jim Cummings' character, it works at a Hollywood agency, and there's a lot of, it felt, a lot of sort of meta commentary. There are a lot of comments like, oh, no one wants to see independent films anymore, like we're gonna have a remake here and we're getting all this IP and everything. But then there's also, a lot of the stories about him grappling with kind of this loss of control and loss of relevancy in many ways. So I don't know, I just wanted to pick your brain a little bit, I guess, on where you feel kind of like the industry is going and how, especially your films, like the more independent ones, still slot in and can still, find their own sort of life.
Yeah, I mean, we had a lot of fun making the beta test because like it all felt very much like, yeah, we were just dealing with this thing on this other project. But yeah, I mean, I think the industry in general is kind of having um this kind of like existential crisis of sorts where we've prioritized, not we being we, but like in general
Right.
like the industry has prioritized this kind of uh like abusive behavior, diva bit like behavior, because there are these like personalities of like, oh well, this person is like powerful and so we need to like bow to them and do whatever they say and let them get away with everything. And so I think a lot of the beta test was kind of exploring that atmosphere and that environment and like kind of showing it for what it is, like ripping off all the like the filters and just like showing it for like the raw kind of grotesqueness that it is. And unfortunately or fortunately, a lot of the dialogue actually comes from like real life interviews that Jim and PJ did, where they interviewed different ex-agents or assistants, former assistants, just to get stories of what it's like, working in the agency world and like just like working in the industry in general. And a lot of the like lines that Jim's character says are like word for word what some assistants were like berated with.
Oof.
Yeah. And so it's intense, but I think it also just kind of speaks to, we're kind of in this post Harvey era, but a lot of the issues that allowed Harvey to be Harvey, I think are still there, and are still kind of like built into the actual system. And so yeah, I think like this film allowed us to kind of call a lot of those things out. And I think because we financed it independently, because we made this kind of completely on our own, it gave us the freedom to not have to worry about industry blowback or like, oh, are we allowed to say this? Are we worried about saying this? It was kind of like, no, let's just say it how it is and not be scared because we were able to do it independently.
It was, I mean, it was, it really skewered a lot of that stuff. I mean, in a great way, obviously. And so, okay, last question, bit more of a fun one, I guess. What's your favorite film that you've seen at Tribeca thus far, or just this year in general?
Oh my gosh, that is such a great question. I wish I could have seen more at Tribeca. It was such a whirlwind that I didn't get to see much of anything except for I got to see the 20-year anniversary screening of the Royal Tenenbaums,
Oh my
um,
gosh.
which was so much fun. We went with a friend of ours, Grant, who's actually in the film. He plays Ari Tenenbaum, and so that was like really fun to get to watch it with him and to have him kind of like every once in a while being like, oh, for this shot, we were doing this thing, and so like to get the insider knowledge. That was fun, and I love that film so much. So that was definitely a treat. I would say just in general this year, um, The Father really blew me away in how it approached such an intense um, mental and psychological issue cinematically in a really like unique way. And also Bo Burnham's Inside, I
Yeah.
think just like I think hit us all on a very visceral level, and I loved it so much.
No kidding. Yeah. Well, for what it's worth, I think my favorite film that I've seen at Tribeca so far was the beta test. So, yay. Yeah, I had such a great time watching that, and Werewolves Within, obviously. Yeah, so those are all my questions. I had such a great time talking with you. This was illuminating and fun and all that fun stuff. And congratulations on having these great films at Tribeca. That's super exciting. And I really appreciate you taking the time to chat. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.